All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is Conversations on Retail. My name is Matt Pfeiffer, and I am the host for today's session. Super excited today to be visiting with Julie Podolec, the co-founder and CEO of The Modern Pop. And I was telling Julie before we started this afternoon that I feel like in a lot of ways I already know her, at least in certain ways, just because she is such a tremendous presence on social media. LinkedIn in particular, but it's so fun to spend some time getting to know her. Before we get started, for the folks that join us and the folks that certainly watch this recorded later, don't call us a podcast. We are not a podcast. What makes Conversations on Retail different is that we intend to bring in a live audience, and we want that live audience to interact by submitting questions. So if you've got questions, we would just ask that you hit the Q&A button and submit those questions as we go. And I'll say that again. So Julie, welcome. Thank you so much for making time to visit. I just want to jump right in. I know that you're a Jersey girl that found your way to Southern California by way of Ohio. I know that you come from a very artistic background, a father that's a photographer. You studied art and marketing in college, but tell us some of the things about you that make you, you.
Yeah, Matt, I love your research on me. No, it means a lot, and thank you so much for having me. I love being on and sharing more about the brand, myself, my background. So a little bit more about me, but you kind of hit it on the head. I am from New Jersey, so I'm a New Jersey girl at heart, New Jersey Shore and everything. I actually went to school in Ohio, so I went to Ohio Wesleyan University. I was a Bachelor of Fine Arts major. So always had a focus kind of in advertising, marketing, on the art side. My father has been a professional photographer, for his entire life. And so I think a lot of that strategy and creativity kind of stems from him and being surrounded by it growing up. After Ohio, I actually went back to New York City. I met Brad, actually my husband, in New York City. We moved out to the West Coast in Laguna Beach, California. And actually more recently have moved back. So we are back on the East Coast. We decided, with COVID happening, we wanted to get closer to family. We have 2 kids, an almost 10-year-old this week, just kills me, and a almost 8-year-old as well. So really enjoy kind of the creative aspect, the marketing side, sales side. I absolutely adore people. I love meeting people, sharing my passion for the product, for the brand. And really just, focusing on, how we can separate ourselves from other brands and other products kind of on shelf and differentiate, to really show off, who we are and what we stand for. So yeah. The Modern Pop is a frozen desserts brand. It's really all about creating simplicity and transparency in ingredients and simplicity, obviously, in labels. Our core mission for being is to put fruit as a first ingredient across all of our SKUs, all of our products. It's very fruit focused and very fun in its branding and marketing.
Yeah, I know a lot of the interviews that I've seen with you have focused a lot on brand building and marketing. And what I want to do is kind of look at your business through the lens of being a startup, and even almost going on 9 years into this, you would probably say that you're still very much in startup mode. But how it is that these startup companies are challenging the incumbent brands and stealing share. One of the things that I like so much about your story is that you started with a need versus a perceived opportunity. So kind of talk about the founding of The Modern Pop.
Yeah, really, I think, a lot of brands do. Modern Pop, after becoming a first-time mother, it's not like the perfect opportunity to start a business in hindsight, looking backwards. But there is no perfect time. I was really, really cautious and thoughtful with what I was feeding my son. I was reading labels more than ever, kind of walking into all the natural stores on the West Coast. And I think moving from the East Coast to the West Coast, just the lifestyle piece of it was so dramatic and different. And so, everything was focused around lifestyle and healthy eating. And when you have a child, it's even more so. And so, after having him, I was just reading ingredient labels, being really careful with what I was feeding him. and he was going through teething at the time. I couldn't find anything that I felt comfortable giving him in the supermarkets. Everything was loaded with sugar. And keep in mind, again, Matt, this was about, 6 or 7 years ago. So things have dramatically changed for the better. But at the time, it was just junk. And the way that it was marketed was not so much. It looked like it was a better for you thing until you turned it over and started reading it. And so, I went home and I just started making them myself, like any mother really would. But I became so in love with them, so passionate about what I was doing, that it turned into more than just, for my own son. I started to market them outside of the kitchen. And that's kind of when we wrapped kind of the concept of this, new twists on old classics and this kind of Palm Springs-esque vibrant colors, and how can we create kind of emotion around something that was more than just a product at the time.
Yeah, that's great. So a few more folks have joined. I just want to say one more time that what makes Conversations on Retail different from a podcast is not only is it okay for our audience to ask questions, we hope that you will. So if you've got questions as we proceed through this conversation, please hit the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. I probably won't say that again, but we're going to be really respectful of Julie's busy schedule today. We're going to try to keep this to 30 minutes. So Julie, instead of me asking you 10 questions to kind of get you through the early days and the early learnings and some of the missteps, why don't you summarize for me what were some of the, from big idea, the first steps, those early learnings, when you knew it was a real business, the first deal with a major retailer, kind of take us through the early history of the Modern Pop. And then I want to really kind of, pick your brain and get some great insights about how you've grown and stolen share and iterated on the brand.
Yeah. Yeah. And like Matt said, raise your hands, guys. I know you're out there. I love answering questions, but, everybody has big ideas. And I think that the first thing that you have to do is just, move forward day to day. And I'm luckily, I feel like, I don't overthink things. I never have. I kind of go with my gut. And so, we started by a cold plate push cart, and it was more so, something fun that I enjoyed doing on the weekend. It was my escape from my child a little bit. I got to get out there, socialize with people. And I also got to brand my, company at the time, which was just a frozen fruit bar stand, as I wanted it. I got to hear real consumer feedback. It wasn't only the product that the people were raving about. It was kind of these memories and the experiences that, myself and the brand were giving back to them. And so I just kind of had this passion for it. I think that people feel it when they hear me speak. I think the brand speaks for itself on the shelf. And, that first summer, we started to get inbound phone calls from, whether it was a local newspaper like the Laguna Beach Independent. And then it became, bigger than that. We got into like the LA Times. So we started to get all of this kind of surrounding publicity in the Laguna Beach area, which really, I think, translated. So it was like natural PR. It was kind of this notion of, oh, what is this popsicle stand in Laguna Beach by the ocean? And it really kind of portrayed more than just, another brand going after it in the grocery store. And so that first summer, we got a call from Whole Foods Market. I remember it so well because I was actually on the East Coast for a friend's wedding, and I just went like, it was like the emotion inside of me just blew up. I knew that it was something so much more than just, a hobby.
So Whole Foods called you. You didn't reach out to them.
It was a local forager. So at the time,
Okay.
was buying locally. And so, it was this great segue into the natural space. And we got into Whole Foods. I remember driving our car with like, like an igloo cooler in the back with dry ice. I mean, it was just like such an experience. They would check the temperature when we got there. We started with about 10 stores. And I would say about 2 months after that, we got a phone call, and it was from the Costco buyer. And so we went from kind of these like little baby steps to this huge mass retailer that called us. And so, there was this amazing kind of feeling. I mean, that doesn't usually happen. And so we actually did kind of scale the brand. Costco enabled us to move our feet extremely fast, scale the brand, move to a co-manufacturer that would actually take our business as a small business seriously because we had a big buyer. And, I don't think in hindsight it was necessarily the right strategic move, but yet it also allowed us to build out our kind of natural and conventional business at the same time, and it enabled us to move our feet fast. I don't think, at the time the product wasn't where it probably needed to be in regards to like taste and profile. I was still making them until we made that move. But it did enable us to become kind of credible. It made us learn extremely fast, the back end and operations. And I like to move. Matt. So,
Yeah.
We learned a lot along the way. So we went into probably about 30 different warehouses in the LA area. But at the same time, I knew that if that Costco business was to fall away, we had to build up that natural and conventional that was so meaningful to kind of support, both sides of it. So, very interesting start, but I think that this type of business, the entrepreneurial spirit and kind of constantly moving the ball forward with all these different opportunities, it's kind of like, what's meant to be will be. And I think, constant putting out energy and having obviously strategic direction is something even more so today. I think we've become a lot more narrow in our thinking. So it's just been such a journey, and I couldn't love, I think, the brand more than what it's become today.
Yeah. So we have a great question from Scott that I'd love to maybe add a little bit to, and then ask you. So the part that I'm going to add, where are you sold today? How many stores are you sold in today? And then Scott's question is, first he says, I love the modern pop story. Not sure what's more addicting, Yellowstone or your ad campaigns. And he's curious, where do you not have distribution today that you're trying to get? In other words, in terms of retail partnerships, who's next?
Right. Hi, Scott. I would definitely say, we're probably in about 2,500 stores, mainly on the West Coast.
Okay.
So we are in Whole Foods only in one region, but we're actually growing into another region as well. We are in, we're in Gelson's, Bristol Farms. We're in Ralph's and Kroger. We are in some CVS stores, basically all on the West Coast. We're in Central Market's in Texas. We just got into Wegmans on the East Coast, Fresh Market. So mainly very West Coast centric. I would say where we would want to grow deepest would be, our Whole Foods relationship, our Sprouts relationship, extremely meaningful partners. These are partners that, it's not about, the scale and the mass. It's more about the consumer that lives there, that's looking for more innovation. Kroger is an amazing partner. If we could grow with Kroger, I think that is a conventional partner that has different banners that definitely speak to what we're doing. So yeah, I think growing that base and on the West Coast, and then certain partners we're really focusing on going deep with.
So I'm fond of saying that, retail is theater, and you are the face and the voice and the conscience of the organization, so active on social media that, and I'm not the first to say this, but I think maybe some people wouldn't realize that you're actually running the company too, because you're so active in kind of communicating the brand story and developing relationships. But talk about the brand and the ways that you've chosen from the early days, and maybe how you've iterated since on how to build the brand, tell the story, and ultimately develop relationships both with consumers and potential retail partners.
Yeah, that's a really great question. So for me, I miss all of these like Expo West and all of these shows because it really got you in front of the buyers. However, I think that it's never been a problem. I think that LinkedIn has been a great community as far as, getting the message through, kind of really driving, your brand story. So I think that, there's different platforms and different social media outlets for different things. For us, I've always, been trying to figure out Instagram. So for me, it's been great because I think LinkedIn has enabled me to have this like connection with my buyers, with my audience that way. And also it's repetition. I've been on LinkedIn before LinkedIn became LinkedIn. So I think that, I've built this community through time, right? And it's like constant repetition. It's just like a company, it doesn't happen overnight. But I do think, and I've been able to learn that when you put yourself or you put an identity in front of something, it becomes more like relatable and meaningful. Like I feel like we have a relationship, even though this is the first time we're getting face to face, Matt. But like you said, you feel like you know me and you know the brand because of that. So it's been a struggle, I think, to be transparent on some of these social media outlets, but it's also all about trying. We have had, had an internal team, and we have an internal team, whether it be, interns, I think are incredible. Like we've had some amazing interns that come in here. They know more about social media than I ever would. But I do think, the consistency and repetition of putting brand out there and sharing the story goes a long way.
So yours is another story, kind of a David and Goliath kind of story, where the small startup challenges the big incumbent brands. And obviously there's not an infinite amount of space in stores, and so for a brand like yours to take space, it has to be taken away from someone else. What has been in what ways have you approached getting on store shelves? How have you challenged the incumbent brands, and how are you beating them?
So for us, I really believe, when you look at these big brands, they're not going away. I used to march into these meetings and be like, you need to take this out and put us in. And I've learned, over the course of X amount of years, none of these retailers are going to take out these big brands, because the big brands really pay for that space. They pay for the marketing, they pay for everything, and it's also the fact that these big brands have been around for years. And, I always use Tide detergent because I always think of my mom using Tide detergent, and then I would use Tide detergent. You kind of buy what you know, unless you're challenged or you're directed to look somewhere else. And so, for us, having obviously not as deep pockets and less reach because of that, it's kind of like, how can we think outside of the box? How can we do things differently? So again, that really comes back to sharing the brand story, evoking emotion in the consumer, trying to do all of the things that all these other brands are doing, but do them more authentically. And I think by using myself, and trying to reach that audience, has put us on the radar. It has enabled us to get, some visibility because of that. And what I do is I say, when you look at the space, you have a whole one or two different doors of X big brand, right? And instead of keeping, both of those two big doors, take out the low-hanging fruit. It's not going away. Take out your low six, and we know that we can outcompete them. So it's really kind of showing that buyer that, by putting us in, not only is it a better for you product with simple, minimal ingredients, the only brand that has fruit as a first ingredient across all flavors, it has a real trigger point. It has a real story, and it has, deeper meaning of why it's there.
Yeah. So we're going to be wrapping up in about 10 minutes out of respect for Julie's busy schedule today. If anyone has any other questions, Scott sent one in earlier. If anyone has any other questions, go ahead and hit me on Q&A or on chat. So Julie said a couple of things earlier that were really intriguing to me. One is you said, basically Costco came and found you. And then the second thing was you named a lot of really great retail brands that you're already doing business with. And so what I'm wondering about with respect to your growth strategy, how aggressive are you in developing relationships with retail partners that you're not currently working with, and how much of your growth strategy is really dependent upon or really focused on performing really well where you are and gaining greater distribution by way of more stores at each of those companies?
Yeah, so I mean, I think if you would have asked me this maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, I would have said, like, we're going to grow, into all of these stores, and we're going to go really fast, and really strong. I am just as, passionate today, but I will say, where we are, we have incredible retail partners. These retail partners are having all of our focus. We're really being thoughtful with where we're putting the products. So, we're looking to go deeper with these retail partners. We're looking to support them. And we're also looking at innovation. We have a ton on our pipeline, really exciting stuff. We've decided you don't need to have 15 different items to be successful. You just have to have, maybe 6, maybe 12 really superstar items that are moving, that are turning, and we want to support those items on shelf. So I would say moving forward into 2022 and 2023, we are going really deep with our retail partners, and we're really focusing on innovating the category in general with those retail partners. Will we move into different directions? Absolutely. But there's no need to run when we have everything we have right now.
Well, my next question, you sort of kind of led up to that in some ways. Talk about the things you're working on now in terms of, iteration. Is it iteration kind of within the current line, or are you looking at like other categories where you might play beyond where you are today?
No, so I think, a lot of the strategy is looking at where we are today. We have great frozen fruit bars. Here they are, everyone. Marketing. So we have really great frozen fruit bars. We are actually looking to come out with 2 new flavors, which would give us the full set of 6, which would be an entire shelf. Extremely important. Obviously, we've had some that have worked. We've had some that we've pulled away. I think the biggest thing that I've learned as an entrepreneur is when it's not working, you move away from it, you try something new. And also coming out with new formats, different kind of, I don't want to give anything away. It's really exciting. Sure. But different formats, different ideas. We don't want to get away from the frozen category right now. We have a lot more to do. It's exciting. It's ripe for innovation. And, I think that you don't have to necessarily do things extremely different. You just have to do them better than everyone else around you. And so, we've really been thinking through, why are these working so well? There's a stickiness to them, and really focusing and honing in on that.
What do you think the business looks like in 3 to 5 years? And the question I have to ask that you probably won't want to answer is, will you still own it? Because companies like yours that do really innovative things and are able to create tremendous customer following and energy and loyalty, they don't last long because some of the other bigger incumbent brands that you become a threat to just decide that they want to take you out. So I'm from one entrepreneur to another. Do you see you and your partner running the business 3 to 5 years down the road? And in either case, what does the company look like?
Yeah, the company really is a platform brand. We've always thought of it that way. We think of it as, a California fruit company. I think it can be taken in many different directions. The most important thing is to see the success of the company. I've never thought this is a brand that we're going to, give on to our son and he's going to give on, it doesn't have to be a family business. The brand has legs. It has, a lot more, I think, than just a product. I think a lot of it is driven through, how fast and how aggressive we want to move with our marketing, and how fast and aggressive we want to move with our sales. So we're open to many different things. But, I don't see myself far from it. And, I know how big it can become. So yeah. We're, working every day and just, blessed to be able to work and get up. And I just love the opportunity, checking my email every morning. It hasn't become dull. And so, I think that there's a lot more to do.
In what ways has COVID impacted your business positively and negatively? Yours is a brand that I'm guessing that sampling is incredibly important, and that probably is a big part of your, in-store marketing strategy. Kind of talk through a little bit of that.
Yeah, luckily I think that we've had, we've been around for 7-8 years in store. So I think, we see a lot of the stickiness with our legacy accounts like Whole Foods, like Bristol Farms. And so, we had a lot of that sampling, and we see that repeat purchasing and repeat buying there. I think it's affected us similarly to how it's probably affected everyone without being able to get out there into the field as much. However, I always think of things in an opportunistic way. I think COVID enabled us to really kind of step backwards, really hone in on what's working, take some things out that, shouldn't necessarily still be in the mix. And, really refocus on what's working and just going deeper with that. So, yeah, I think, change is good. I think it's always our supply chain. We've been really fortunate. We haven't had any disruptions. I think that, we've also been fortunate to be able to continue and not be disrupted by it at all. So we've really been lucky in that sense.
Well, last couple of questions. If you could go back in time and give yourself some advice, 8 years ago, 9 years ago, at the very, very beginning, what are some of the things that you wish you would have done, differently, that maybe could have made the early years, especially, a little easier, a little less painful, move a little faster?
I think that you kind of learn as you go. Some of the accounts we went into, we did not need to go into. So I think in hindsight, I would say to be a little bit more patient with the progress of accounts and kind of the strategy of it. So I think I would just tell myself to slow down and kind of look at where the product needs to be first, rather than where it might sound good to be. And so, with time, that build will come, and it's coming.
Yeah, for sure. So my last question is, and I already know the answer. Everybody already knows the answer, but my question is, are you having as much fun as it seems like you're having?
Matt, I love it. Yes, I really feel very blessed, like I said, to be able to get up every day. Some days are harder than others. Some days you get good news, some days you get bad news, but I really love the challenge of it. For me to be able to kind of get through to the right people, to have the opportunity to be selling something that, started from a need. Do I think that, we could have even more help at some stages? Absolutely. But, there's not a day that goes by that I wish I was doing something else. Well, I feel, very fortunate for it.
So my last question, my sense is, and you and I have had a little bit of interaction, one-on-one. My sense is you're not really looking for anyone to help, walk your product into any other retail accounts. You're not really needing help on the growth side. But is there anything that the community, is there any area of your business where you could use some help right now that you wouldn't mind to hear from somebody, whether it's packaging or supply chain or shopper insights? Are there any pain points in your business where you wouldn't mind to hear from somebody?
That's a really good question. I think, where we could use the most fire is really kind of the marketing side. I think that you probably have seen me on LinkedIn, a lot of people have, but when it comes to the consumer, I think spreading that word and being able to kind of have that ripple effect into the community of consumer is where, it's what every brand, it's what every influencer, is doing. And so, being able to think through that strategy even deeper from a different lens and perspective, I think is so important, to be able to sit around a round table and discuss, different ideation, because everybody sees things differently. So I would say probably marketing. I always love hearing other people's opinions about the brand. And I always think it's interesting to see how people view the company from outside in.
Well, Julie, we're right at 30 minutes. And I just want to thank you again for making time to sit down and have this conversation with us today. Congratulations to you and to your family on the success that you've had. And we're certainly going to be watching and rooting for you, telling everyone about you. And again, thank you so much, Judy Podolec, the co-founder and the CEO of The Modern Pop. It's been great getting to know you. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much, Matt. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So long.